Must be movie time. Welcome to Spectre Studios. Talk a dozen movies. Hey folks, Spectre Studio here once again to do another top 12 movie countdown. And this time we're going to cover fantasy. This one is going to be a little different because kind of brought in a friend in, and he's pretty much a big movie buff too, and an entertainer aspect. And he kind of got me thinking that some of these films could really fall under historical fiction. So if you're thinking some of the films in here I missed, could be I'll be doing my top 12 historical fiction films, and those films will be in there. So I'm open to have the comments below when you do see this list, but just kind of be aware that another top 12 will be coming down the road, which I'll be doing this historical fiction part of it and see how that kind of works itself out. Alright, without any further ado, let's start with the top 12 countdown.
Number 12.
Alright, thank you. Alright, and starting it off at our number 12, we're going to do Ladyhawke. This was a pretty neat film. It had a nice little element of a story where Rutger Hauer's character is a wolf, and Michelle Pfeiffer's character is a hawk, and they're two lovers, but they've been cursed, and they're forced to spend in animal forms, separated apart, never being able to be together as humans without the curse being lifted. This film came out in 1985, directed by Richard Donner. So, you know, definitely for you here in 2014, a very dated film, but it is still a very good film. The element of this curse, having a fantasy element set in medieval times, is very awesome. It's very cool and a really good story. I like this, and that's why it made the top 12, because the story is very good and very solid. And Michelle Pfeiffer and Rutger Hauer are two very popular actors that do really good in movies, and I really enjoyed them. Also, there's another one name that you know, our former fan of who is Ferris Bueller, Matthew Broderick, is also a key character in this film that gets the film moving along. So if you haven't seen it yet, definitely go back in time and check this out. This is number 12. That is Ladyhawke.
Number 11. Number 11.
Okay, at my number 11, this one I had to kind of put in there. Well, I say I had to put. I felt it was very fantasy. It is a very interesting film because of the aspect of where it came from, being a children's literature book from its roots. But to see such an old story being brought to life the way that I felt it was brought to life, and it is pretty over the top. It is very childish in the aspect of the elements of entertainment. However, it really is pure fantasy. It has a lot of these crazy elements that you're going to have in your world. Satires to centaurs, and even guest appearances by Santa Claus. And what am I talking about? I'm talking about the Chronicles of Narnia, The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. Very, very entertaining. As much as, like I said, it has very much a child element to its creation and its roots, but it was very entertaining, I gotta say, to kind of explore that world and go through that again through the imagination from the director, which was released in 2005, directed by Andrew Anderson and Marilyn Fox. So again, key element there. It was very cool. Can't really, I mean, I can look. I have the actors here, but Georgia Henley, William Moseley, T.D.S. Swinton. They're all young. They're still really kind of moving forward in their careers. But again, I found this was very entertaining for the aspect of where it came from, its roots, and I enjoy it. So it has been following the book series. So if you haven't seen it, it's definitely worthwhile, and you will be entertained from that. And check it out. So we're talking number 11, The Chronicles of Narnia, The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe.
Number 10. Number 10.
All right, now I'm at my number 10. And this one at number 10 has a lot of passionate love for me. I really enjoyed this. I'm much older. This film came out in 1983. I remember going to the theaters with a couple of friends to go see this, and I was pretty blown away. Uh, and, and for me to have a passion to this movie love, you've got to understand about the time frame in 1980s. Films that were shot like this didn't really have much of its cast killed off. This time frame, storytelling or movie taking was a lot about the hero succeeding at the end. There wasn't a lot of that, failure for our heroes. Media wanted, and our fans pretty much wanted to see a lot of success and a lot of the over-the-top. If you look at the over-the-top action movies of this time. So when this film kind of came out, I was pretty blown away, being from the roots that I come from with my love of tabletop gaming and role-playing, where Dungeons and Dragons aspect, where it's not always, killing dragon, getting all the treasure, and saving the women. You're going to have a hard, tough road. So this film really, really cemented that. And so number 10 for me is the movie Crawl. Now, the reason again for this movie having a lot of its success is the characters that are recruited to basically save their homeworld as he's going to go rescue the princess, they're dying off. And some of the key characters you would think that he recruits that come part of his journey, they're perishing. So this was pretty uncommon for 1983. So I enjoyed that early on and then followed suit. Now, our time and frame, we're pretty much used to the suffering and the trials that heroes would have to go through and possibly fail and die, their friends and stuff like that, to make it a little bit more, the sacrifice being more worthwhile. But back then, that wasn't really the case. So I really enjoyed that part of it. Liam Neeson's early career was in this film as well, as he's one of the bandits that gets recruited to go along this journey to stop the Beast for that. Now, the ending wasn't all too great for me. The awesome glaive that you see a lot in this type of the film wasn't really utilized, but the real good story of the richness of the story again is the journey that takes a number of these characters from this world that are going to go save the world from this alien invasion of the Beast. I really did enjoy that, and I think it's very good. I think a lot of the sci-fi elements that were also in place with this will hold up. The creatures, the aliens that are invading are still very cool if you go back and check them out now. And I kind of like the technology that was behind some of their weaponry. So check this out. This is no film, but I think it's still a treasure. You should need to check out at number 10, Crawl.
Number 9. Number 9.
All right, number 9. This will be a strange one to put in this one a little bit because the element of it will come to, at the time, modern times. But it starts starts back in dated history, and there's definitely a lot of fantasy element to it. And this was a film that I did enjoy. I did not really quite like the other movies that were followed to it, and the TV show to this wasn't also as entertaining because the concept kind of got a little too overblown if you were kind of follow it from this one film. So it was one of those tough. The popularity of the first film was awesome. To try to make sequels and then a TV show off of it got a little confusing if there is only going to be one. And of course that means that film is The Highlander. This came out in 1986, starring of course Christopher Lambert and Sean Connery, as you can remember that. So this had a very cool element. Of course, ancient swordsmen that are, immortals that are battling themselves through the course of time, and the only way to get stronger was to eliminate their other immortals by beheading them using their swords. There will only be a final immortal. So this was it's a cool story. It's got a lot of element. The first film, of course, is better. Don't take it for a lot of its accuracy. Sean Connery was cool, but he seems to have lost his. He seems to be more British than Spanish. So there are that elements, and of course Sean Connery was more English than also I think Scottish. So very weird, but it still had a lot of entertaining value in the 1980s. It was pretty cool to see this immortal battle and the way it was done, and it was very enjoyable in that aspect. So at number 9 is So we're at number 8, and this one has had a lot of updates over the course of time. But for me, the original, that was very cool. It really brought the element of fantasy to me. It's an old English story, that of King Arthur, and I'm talking about the 1981 film Excalibur. This was directed by John Boorman, but Nigel Terry, Helen Mirren, Nicholas Clay, Cherry Lund, Paul Joffrey. This was an awesome cast. It was also with a gleaming armor. It was just really, really brutal, very intense, and it really, at a young age, really kind of set the tone for where you can get some really nice, dark medieval stories, and really push it out there and see, some of this magical element out of it. This may seem a little dated to anyone who does pick up this now, compared to back when it came back in the 80s. But again, it's still got a good rich core for it. It's very intense, and I did enjoy it for what it did portray. So, like I said, check it out. It's an old film again. You're going to see a lot of these old films in this countdown, but I did enjoy Excalibur a lot, and you should definitely check into that yourself.
Number 7. Number 7.
Okay, we're at number 7, and this one may be a little bit of a stunner. It's going to probably raise some eyebrows, for you probably have not heard of it, because it is pretty much one of my little dark horses that got into this. It is one of my few of my top 12s that I have basically done so far that's also animated. So what could that be? At number 7, I'm putting out Fire and Ice. Now, I'm putting it in the fantasy, even though it is an animated thing, because it is really, really an awesome, awesome tale. This was set out in 1983, where these barbarians are basically being overtaken by this sorcerer, Necron, who's able to push glaciers to kind of dominate with his barbarian tribes and kind of take over. And they're running into the classic, this ice fortress and glaciers moving forward, and it's finally pushed down south far enough where this other tribe who lives near a volcanic home is now opposing them. And to defeat them, the princess is abducted, which brings in one of the tribes that has already been conquered, and a very cool lone hero, Dark Wolf, to the mix of this. The animation will be a little dated now, but it is definitely a very interesting movie because it's based on Frank Frazetta's type of artwork. If you don't know Frank Frazetta, he is one of the more very well known artists that does a lot of fantasy art throughout a lot of mediums and magazines and stuff like that. So that's where this movie has a lot of its shine, because of that art direction and kind of going forward with this. If you haven't seen this film, really, really check it out. It's definitely got that old element of, kind of like a Conan type of thing, where the story is very good, it's very pure. The basic princess abduction and moving on with the hero coming forward, and the action is good for what it is. Again, on the old premises of Frank Frazetta's artwork. So I enjoyed this story. I think it's still very good, and it's again one of those few animated films that made this top 12 countdown. So you just definitely check that out.
Number 6. Number 6.
All right, we're at the halfway point, and this one may be a surprise. But if you really love fantasy and you really know the world that could be brought by this director, you can't say no to making it to this list. The film came out in 1986, directed by one of our famous puppeteers, Jim Henson, and that film is Labyrinth. A very young Jennifer Connelly was in this, and a great singer named David Bowie. And to make this bit of a musical, for what Bowie was able to do with this, as well as a lot of the puppeteering by Henson, this is a beautiful movie. This is a really wonderful thing. It's definitely got a very great children's flair to it, for the humor that you're adding into it, but it's got some adult twist to it, things that make it pretty darn interesting, and it will keep you entertained. The goblins in it are hysterical, and it has a lot of that humor that was well known with the Muppets. So if you have a little bit of that want to see some of those like puppets going into live action where not much was done by, nothing was really done with CGI. This was definitely very old school in the nature of entertainment. This was one that definitely makes the list, and it is awesome. You should definitely check this one out. This is Labyrinth.
Number 5. Number 5.
All right, at number 5, this is another film that was redone. And although the action is and the CGI for the new one definitely is up to a modern level, I like this original story and the way that was formatted and put in front of me to make it on part of my top list. That is the 1981 movie edition of Clash of the Titans. Directed by Desmond Davis, with Judy Bowker as Andromeda. Lawrence Oliver was the great Zeus at the time. And Harry Hamlin was Perseus. So, now, why I like this a little bit more was a little bit more with Calibos and the curse that he was kind of being put through. I do like the old claymation as I was growing up to a lot of it, and that really added some cool elements. The look was more traditional as well, but I kind of felt the story flowed pretty good in this one, where it felt like in the new one it was a bit rushed, and the gifts from the gods seemed like an afterthought. If you were to watch this film, it was pretty much of a big deal. Really made Perseus feel like that he was the son of Zeus, and I enjoyed it. And of course, Boo Boo the Owl was one of the archaic things. Like, they give him a little bit of homage in the new film, but it was kind of cool back then, and really kind of added to it, and having starting the little mascot of things. So I enjoyed this film for more of the story element that is being presented to you. If you look at the way it was kind of put out and the flow to it, I think it was stronger than the new one, the Clash of the Titans. Although Wrath of the Titans continues to push this forward, the action's still there, but to me, the fantasy old Greek style was a lot more enjoyable through this old 1981 rendition. And if you have, it's up to you. Check it out. How do you guys feel about this one versus the new one? Like I said, I'm old school, so that's why it's coming a little bit more into my heart that I enjoy this one, because I've seen this one a lot of times, and I could still go back and watch it again, where the new one, it's like, it didn't really pull me as much in. So what do you guys think? Tell me below, and where does it fit in your list?
Number 4.
All right, we're at number 4. This is also a very strange one, but if you've seen it, you're pretty much going to be well solid into this. This had me falling in love immediately with Guillermo del Toro. Let's say that kind of right. As soon as I kind of saw this film, I really became intrigued to what he does for directing, and I have been coming to enjoy a lot of the stuff that he does. But this film came out in Spain and Mexico in the 2006, and then later it was released a little bit later in the United States a couple of months later. I'm talking about Pan's Labyrinth. Now, you're pretty much not going to know many of the stars out of this unless you really kind of check into it, but this was a very great dark fantasy. You hear a lot of like grim fairy tales and stuff of a spin, but man, the ideas that were kind of into this, really showcasing Guillermo del Toro's kind of like Tim Burton-esque type of approach to stuff. And I thought this film was creepy, it was cool, it was intense, and again, his storytelling was very, very solid. You have to do a lot of reading through the captions below, but this is a very, very good story. If you have not seen this, like again, it was not a highly publicized film, but it's one that if you do check out, you're gonna really, really enjoy it, and really see an early stage where you can see the roots of Del Toro's art directing. So I really advise you guys to check this one out because this one is solid, it's awesome, and it's definitely worthy at my spot at number 4.
Number three.
All right, we're at number 3, and back in the '80s when I think really fantasy was being told much better than it is a lot of the day, and a lot of this is because maybe I feel that art directors now are so intent on CGI and making fantastic over-the-top monsters, they forget that fantasy is really about the story and the passion behind the characters in that story. This was again another remade film to a very, very old and popular character. Yep, that's my boy here, and great following of Conan the Barbarian. And this is the 1982 movie that was done by Arnold Schwarzenegger. Of course, baby, he's back in the top 12 list. What can I say? This James Earl Jones was the villain in this, and of course, if you know as James Earl Jones and a lot of the other things he does, he's just amazing, and he was such a great villain. When you talk movies, you have to understand in the storytelling. With that great villain, you can really pull in a great audience, and the ability of James Earl Jones to kind of feel above all of us, make you feel like you are the disciples and the followers with that silky smooth voice of his, as it played through this, and Conan with Schwarzenegger's really harsh barbarian type of approach to the things, you can really see the elements of where this character is in an early stage, to what he's trying to become. Conan the Destroyer, on the other hand, not so good, but this film had the fun, it had a lot of the elements that I think is cool, and Arnold pulled it off with a lot of his sword fighting, his physical ability. Now the new film, I think, is good. The guy can really portray a lot of what you have for Conan, but again, for me, this was the roots. This really established, I think, a lot. Also, when this film made, a lot of other fantasy films kind of came off of this film. It really pushed the envelope in the '80s for a lot of people to want to do more of this. And there are a couple of the other bad offshoots of Conan from the roots of these guys that also hit the mainstream. But for what, if you remember this one was great. I still think this movie even holds up to now. Maybe a little bit, not so much the snake, but it's still solid. The sword fighting is very good. The armor, the costumes, and all that stuff is pretty excellent. If you haven't seen it, it's a long time back. The new one, I guess, is pretty good, but this one is definitely awesome. I enjoyed it ever since I was growing up, and I still enjoy it to this day. That's why it is at my top 3, and that's why I'm a big Arnold fan, and you should definitely check this out if you're a big Arnold fan as well, because this is one of his best ones.
2.
Okay, we're at my number 2, and I think if you've seen this film, I don't think you're going to argue it being at number 2, because this was one of those great enjoyment tales being told you. Interesting enough, the movie kind of shot also was through a grandfather telling a tale to his grandson, and that movie is the 1987 movie The Princess Bride. And yeah, this movie is fantastic. It had the swashbuckling, it had your giant, it had your cleverness going on, the intrigue, the magic, all the stuff that was put in here, but the charm. The characters in this film are just magical. They really leap at you, they really pull you in. It's so hard to even dislike a lot of the characters in this thing because of the way they're being portrayed and the way they're pushed. But this movie is just simply fantastic. Directed by Rob Reiner, You have Carrie Ells, Robin Wright, Mandy Patinkin, Chris Sarandon, Andre the Giant, Christopher Guest, Fred Savage, Wallace Shawn, Billy Crystal, Cara Kane, Mel Smith, and Peter Cook. Every single one of these actors just did a fantastic job in this film. I love it. It's, you know, it's true love, it's great sword fighting, it's battling with your wits, it's battling with your strength. I mean, you have it all. Taking on a castle, magic with bringing people back from the dead. It's, you can't say enough about this film. If you haven't seen it, this one is definitely a shame on you. If you've seen it once, then you need to go see it at least 3 more times, because this one is just fantastic. It holds up. It's great to watch with your children. It's great to watch with your loved one. It's great to just have a bunch of friends over and have a bunch of fun with it too, because I thoroughly enjoyed the way this movie was played out, and again, it's a treat. So make sure you check this one out, which is my number 2, The Princess Bride.
Number 1.
Okay, we're at my number 1. I'm just going to put one of these films here, although it is a trilogy and heading into a prequel. But you pretty much, I feel, know the top one in this list. It can't be really any surprise, because it's basically a movie countdown, but it ties right to our roots of our literature with one of the most great writers to basically set the tone for the fantasy for what it is today, in J.R.R. Tolkien. And that will be The Lord of the Rings, and we're going to give it to the Fellowship of the Ring, because it kind of started it all. You know, a lot of people in this. Peter Jackson pretty much directed this. This film came out in 2001, so to kind of think back, yeah, it's been that long since we've first seen this film. Then we've seen the extended editions, and now we're into The Hobbit being redone now. But this was just amazing. You know, Peter Jackson really did justice to this. Followed very true to the story in this renditions, and then he slowly kind of got moved on and tried to correct things as best he could through Tolkien's writing. But you know, we're seeing orcs and trolls and, you know, wyvern things and wraiths and stuff. This was really the fantasy world that we're used to, with elves and dwarves and their kingdoms and all the magic of the wizards and the hobbits and stuff like that. This is what it's all about. You know, this is the pinnacle for all these other films they basically climb to, strive to. So, again, no surprise. I think you guys cannot disagree that, you know, The Lord of the Rings is pretty much the epitome of where a lot of the fantasy films want to be. But again, it should be. Its roots were based in our literature that has been setting the tone for everything that I know myself have been into since the Dungeons and Dragons and all the fantasy elements to that we follow, to the stories and stuff. It's all set from that type of literature. And I hope you guys enjoyed this. Remember, I will probably be doing a top 12 countdown for that historical fiction movies that have fantasy elements, but they're tall tales off the original tales that have been told over the centuries and of our life. I will be doing a top 12 countdown of historical fiction for, you know, movies that basically have a fantastic element off some of our history, that have, you know, fighting abilities and all that stuff. So if some of those things didn't make your list, don't be surprised if you find them there in the historical fiction. But I did hope you enjoy a lot of these fantasy movies that I have chosen. And for those of you that are on this channel that know this is a gaming channel, I am dearly, dearly sorry that Dungeons and Dragons did not make this. Hopefully down the road, we'll get to redo this again. Maybe that World of Warcraft movie that's coming out will help spawn a new era of great fantasy movies for us. So again, hope you enjoyed. Subscribe to this channel. Don't forget to comment below and let me know what films that you would have put on this top 12 list. And like I said, I might go back and revisit and do a new hashing of this. Plus, there are many more movies coming out, and hopefully they are great. Because this one was pretty interesting. As you noticed, there are a lot of 1980 to the early 90s films that were in this one. Not many new ones. So come on, directors, you know, get this fantasy world up and to where it belongs. So again, hope you enjoyed and subscribe.